Hello everybody, it's Claire here from Sewn by Claire, and today we're going to continue on with our series, and we are making Lillian the Lamb from Lilly Rose Dolls, and she's this absolutely delightful 22-inch character made out of felt and faux fur, and then she's got this absolutely fabulous outfit which I can't wait to start making. In the last video, in the part 1 video, we've made art body, 2 legs and 2 arms, and we've got those all stuffed and all ready to go. So today we're going to absolutely turn her into a character all of her own by making her head. Now before we get started, I want to say a really big thank you to Claire and to Richard of Lilly Rose Dolls, as they have gifted the kit to me so that I can bring this tutorial to you. So I hope it is useful on your Lilly Rose Dolls adventure, because once you've made one you'll want to make more, I can guarantee it. So before I get carried away with extolling the virtues of Lilly Rose Dolls, let's point the camera down and we'll get started. So just before we go on to the main sewing of the head, I thought I'd show you the finished article, because sometimes it's nice to see what's actually been made in the video so that you know whether you want to carry on or not watching. And so this is our Lilly Rose Dolls Lillian the Lamb head. This is in the 22-inch size. And I show you step by step how to get your felt and your faux fur from that flat fabric into this beautiful 3D shape just here. Okay, I'll let you get on with the video then. Okay, so I've put all of these parts out of the way for now. Just make sure you've got somewhere nice and clean, because this white is going to discolour quite quickly. But we made all of those and had great fun doing that. And so what you should be left with is your pattern pieces and your fabrics for your head. So we've got 2 faux fur side pieces here. We've got the centre gusset. We've got 2 ears made out of faux fur, and we've got 2 inner ears made out of the fabric there that we're going to be using. And then we have got our side face pieces here, 1 and 2. Again, they're mirror copies out of felt. And then we've got a nose piece. So all of these pieces here, I just kind of keep them all together with my pieces just so that I don't get lost. It does just help you stay organised. And the other thing is, on the faux fur in the last video, we finished by just ironing on the, pressing on the, interfacing onto the back, and that was of the faux fur, and that was to take the stretch out. If you remember, there was some stretch in that fabric and there isn't any now. So that's what we've been doing. So let's just pile all of these pieces up over here for now, because we'll need to keep ourselves organised. And I think that is sometimes, when you've got so many pieces, that is one of the tricky things, isn't it, is staying organised with everything. But it's well worth trying to do that, and just keeping an eye on how things are. Don't lose your pattern pieces as well. The box makes a really handy store for those. So without tipping everything off, let's pop that in there. The first thing I'm going to start with is the ears. So I want to have the 2 faux fur pieces of fabric, and I want to have the 2 pieces of fabric cut out of, pieces of inner ear cut out of the little ditzy print fabric there that was in your kit. Don't worry about these scraggy edges on the end. That's just where the faux fur has gone over the edge, but we're going to be dealing with all of that in a moment. Now, there's a couple of things to think about when you're sewing with faux fur. One is getting rid of that stretch, which we've done by stabilising, and I've even stabilised the ears with that interfacing. And the other thing is that you also want to be aware that the faux fur is thicker than normal fabric. So when you're actually working the fabric through the machine, the feed dogs, which are underneath your machine, on the bed of your machine, sometimes can struggle. So I would never sew with the faux fur against the feed dogs. I mean, luckily we're going to be sewing these inside out, so we're going to have the interfaced edge against the feed dogs, or we're going to have our fabric. But just know that if ever you try and sew faux fur and you've got it against your feed dogs, you will struggle with that. So you do need to just bear that in mind. Okay, first thing we're going to do then is we are going to take one faux fur and 1 ear, and we're going to pop them on top of each other. Just make sure you've got the pile on your ears going down the right way. So I had mine going down like this. So we're going to find the top edge. And what you can do as well is you can use a pin, and you can just tuck that pile of that fur in between the 2 layers. Look, just hold it just gently in your hand, and then you should be able to have a little gap, and you can just tuck that faux fur in before we start to sew. match up your corners as best as you can, and let's have our pins with the points going into the middle and the little ball ends going out on the edge. Let's do the other side. Let's get the top started first. So we've got a nice clean edge on the top here as well. Tuck all that fur in. That's right. Use the point of your pin, it'll just fold it, tuck it in for you, and then we can just start that off. If your pin doesn't go through straight away, especially because you've got the interfacing on, just give it a twist and it should then come through for you. And then we're going to get our pins and we're going to work down the sides of these pattern pieces and just tuck the fur in. Working with faux fur does take a little bit longer than dealing with a fabric or a felt, but the effects are so worth it. So do persevere, because it will be worthwhile. And you're trying to get your faux fur really to match the shape of your fabric inner ear, because that hasn't had the stretch in it. So that would be my suggestion, to get the right shape and size. Faux fur, sometimes when you're just drawing on it, especially if the fabric has got a stretch like this one did have, it can stretch sometimes whilst you're drawing on your fabric. Okay, let's make sure that fur is in there, because we'll be needing that later to give us a lovely end to our ear. And on the end there, we should just do it. There we go. So there's our ear ready for sewing. So I'm going to go ahead now and do the same on the other ear and get that all ready to pin. And then we're going to go to the sewing machine, and then we'll talk about using a walking foot first, because if you're not familiar with a walking foot, then that could be really helpful. So I'll get that ready first and I'll show you, but I am going to sew mine with a regular foot, because I think most people have a regular foot rather than the walking foot. Back to you in a second. Okay, let me introduce you to a walking foot if you've not seen one before. You might have seen one before. They're quite bulky, but they are just absolutely invaluable as a tool in your sewing kit and for your sewing machine. It is an add-on that you have to buy, and the genuine ones, the authentic ones, are about £50, I think, depending on your currency. This one's my Janome one, and that's how much this one cost me. And I did try buying a cheaper one off one of the other imitation sites, but it broke within the first fortnight. So I would recommend that if you can, you go for one. I think I've had this one over a year now, so they really are worth it if you buy the ones that are genuine. It's quite chunky and it fits onto your machine. This little bit here goes over the top of your needle bar, which is here when you fit it. So the little needle bar there where you unscrew to attach your needle, that's where that little lever goes over the top. And what you'll see on the end here is, if I hold it like that, it's got a serrated edge on the bottom there that goes up or down depending on how that lever is used. And what that does is it means that your feed dogs, which is the rough part, oops, if I can get this out, oh no, because I want my needle down, hold on a second. The rough part under here, which moves your fabric along, it's duplicated on the bottom of this foot here, and so the two interlock together, so the two layers are pulled through at the same time. So it's absolutely invaluable if you sew silky fabrics, silk or even stretch fabrics, or you use is it spandex or lycra, that type of thing. And again, faux fur as well, it's really good for, because whilst the fabrics are thick, again, it's great for denim and also for bag making as well. It's just a really, and quilting, it's used a lot for quilting too. Then it's a really handy tool for you. You don't have to have one, but if you do find yourself making a lot of the characters with the faux fur, or you do quilting and you do bag making, you're really going to get your money's worth out of this little gadget. It's called a walking foot. So it's really good. Some machines have them built in already, depending on how fancy you are. Mine hasn't, because mine's a fairly basic machine, but I like it that way. It's nice and easy, and it does show you then that you can get a really good result without having to spend a lot of money. But that's what it is. And then I keep all of my feet in a little takeaway Tupperware pot, and I've just got it lined up, labelled up, so that we can see where we are. So that's what I would suggest that you use if you've got one. If not, then we're going to be sewing this as is. So what we're going to do is we are going to be sewing around this curve here. So I'm going to move my needle across to the left hand side because I find that that works really well for me when I am sewing on thicker fabrics and also sewing round in these corners, because it gives you a bit of a smoother curve. I also like to follow the edge of the fabrics, my 1/4 inch seam allowance on here as well, just to make it kind of really nice and precise. And we do want 2 ears that are the same size, so that's also good to do. So I'm going to approximate my 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then I'm going to take a couple of stitches forward and a couple of stitches back, and then I'm going to put my needle in the work. If you haven't got a button that puts the needle into your work for you, let me just tilt the camera up for you to see. You can also use your hand crank on the side of your machine just here to leave your needle in the work. Some machines have it as an automatic feature like mine does, so that now I've pressed that button, every time I stop, my needle's going to be in the fabric of the item that I'm sewing, and so it just makes it easier for pivoting, but sometimes they don't have that. And then you just have to hand crank it instead. So we can do most of it with quite a nice little curve on it. Just be aware if you're starting to get a little bit of a pucker on mine just in here. So I'm just going to take my time, just lift up the needle and put it down again, and lift up the presser foot and put it down again, and that will just ease the tension on the fabric. As we start to come round, depending on the severity of the curve, we're going to do as much as we can without lifting the needle, but then when it gets a bit too tight, we're going to leave our needle in the work, lift up our presser foot and just change your angle. You're better to change your angle more often than you are make it too severe a change in one go. We get a much smoother line that way. So let's carry on around here. And we're going to sew both ears the same way. I'm just going to show you one today, just to keep the video as short as possible. And we're going to reverse at the end as well. I take my needle out of the work, get my snips, I take off my threads, starting and stopping, and there we've got our little ear all sewn. Now, because we have got a curve on this fabric here, I'm going to say that we need to just do some little snips. So we're just going to snip through the faux fur and the fabric, but we're not going to we're going up to but not through the stitches. Can you see that? So up to but not through the stitches. And that will just help your ear lie much flatter when you turn it through. The rule of thumb is the more steep the curve, the closer together your little snip should be. And if you've got quite a gentle curve, then you can just do them every 1/2 inch or so, and that will be fine. Let me just show you those little snips all the way along there. And then what that does is it helps the fabric just fold over onto itself. And then when we're ready, we can pull the front and the back apart. We're going to push our finger inside, and we're going to turn these around the right way round. Just take a little bit to start on, and then you can pull it through. Okay. Just use your finger just to get the edges of the fabric out. And you're looking for this little overhang of your fur. That's why we tucked those edges in, so we get this little overhang of fur, so it makes all the ears look really, really soft and fluffy. Just curve your fabric out right out to the edges. Just fluff up your fur, and then if you want to, you can just on the seam just pull out that fur. I've just got a pin here, it's actually a felting needle, but you don't need a felting, you just use a pin, and if you just pull that fabric out, the little bits of fluff out from the seam, it'll give you a lovely, lovely soft edge to your ear, which is what we want. Going for maximum cute appeal, aren't we, on these? And she's already cute, is Lillian, so we need to just enhance her a little bit, but this will help. Just make sure we put it right to the edge. then when you're happy, you can have a look at your ear from one side. You might just keep shedding a few little bits for a while, and then if we turn it over and look on the other side, you'll see we've got that lovely tufty edge to that ear. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do the same on the second one, and then we'll be ready to move on to the next part of our head. Okay, so once you've got 2 ears, we're going to move on to the next stage. Just put those to one side and put those towards your box, or keep them put them into your box if you've got to have a gap. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to take the 2 curved fur pieces that are like this, and we're going to take our 2 side front pieces which are like this. And what we need to do is we need to make sure that when we lay these out, we remember our orientation. So we know that this is a left and a right with the pointy bits together. So let me just show you that because it's a bit easier on this side. So this pointy bit here is towards the middle, and then we've got the reverse side here with the pointy bit towards the middle. So that's fine. Let me keep that on top because it's probably easier for you to see, isn't it? And then on our section here, we've got a point A and a point B. So point A is your nose and point B is your eye. So if we just separate these out just slightly, when we're looking at our fabric pieces, let's lay it on top and make sure we've got one right there, and we can pop that just into there. And then this is the reverse of that one, as we remember that way, and that one goes there. But the noses, point A, needs to be together on these 2. So just move those 2 pieces of felt so you can see how we've got these 2 mirrored copies of the side of the face. So we're going to work with each one in turn, but first of all, so let's just take this piece of felt here and let's turn it over so that it's laying on the top of your piece of faux fur. So I just took that piece of felt, turned it over, and then this curved edge here goes against the inside curve edge of the face just there. So put those on top for now. I'm just going to work with one. And then we'll be able to see. So the first thing we're going to do is go down to the bottom here, which is this is our neck area here. So we're going to go down to the bottom. Again, we're going to be folding this fur in, and as you've seen, it's really useful to have a pin just to help you tuck that fur in, because that gives that lovely soft edge. And let's put a pin at the bottom down there with those raw edges together. Oh, pin won't go through, so just give it a twist and then it'll go through. Now, before we do anything else, we're going to go up to the top here, to the end of the curve. And we're going to then, so there's point B and there's point A. So we're not working on this tighter curve down the bottom. It's this curve around the top we're working with. And we're now going to pin that. We're going to have to just turn the fabric slightly in order that that top bit fits together. I'm going to just get the cardboard, and I'll show you again in the cardboard. Just tuck that fur inside and get that right at that top point there, because you're going to need that. That's going to be your forehead, or the top of your forehead. And you've got this slight gap bit. It doesn't want to sit quite together. So let me just show you what I've done with this. Let me just fold it out like that. That's how it's going to look like when it's finished. Look, with the faux fur and then the side of the face. So what we've done is we took our point piece here with the point, and our piece here with our point A and point B. Maybe if I turn it that way, you'll be able to see. Yeah, that's better, isn't it? And these 2 fit in together like that. So we've got to sew them like that. But when you turn your felt over, you'll see that you've got a curve coming out this way, and you've got your curve going round that way, and the same at the bottom. So it can be a little bit confusing when you're trying to pin these together. But what I've done first is I've gone down to the bottom here and I've secured it. And then I've turned this piece of fabric out, and obviously you can manipulate felt better than card, and then I've pinned that point there at the top there. So you see with the card it won't allow it to go together, but what happens is when you turn it round, can you see how it's creating this curve in the cardboard, and that's what's going to give you the shape in the side of the face. So I hope that makes sense for you. If you get stuck, sort of like look at it this way, put your felt on the top, and then you're just going to go to the bottom there and then to the top there. So that's what we've done first of all. We've got a 2 piece of felt and we've got a hole in the middle here. The next thing we're going to do is kind of fold the felt in half to get a halfway point. Let's just put a pin through the felt first for the moment, because we know that's our halfway point. And then we're going to tuck our fabric in, and where that lands nice and neatly on the fur, we are now going to just take the pin out, tuck the fur in, because we want that fur all tucking in, and then we're going to pin it on the edge just there. So we've gone straight into the middle of those 2 points, okay? And then we're going to do, again, what I call split the difference, is we're going to come back down to here again, and we're going to put a pin in the bottom, between those 2 pins that you've done. Oh, give it a twist, that's it. Come on, through you go, that's it. And then again here, we've got, again, it doesn't want to sit quite right together. You see it's struggling, but that's just because of the opposing curves, really. It's going to give you a fantastic head when you've finished. So let's put a pin through at that point there. So that's what we've got. This is how it looks now. So your fur's all bunched up on one side and your felt's laying quite flat. So I'm going to sew it with the felt side down, because then we can control this side to make sure we don't have any puckers in it. And this is correct. So just make sure that you've not pinned any puckers in. When you pull your fabric and your felt apart, you should, alongside each other, you should be able to get a nice run along there, which I can. So that's fine. So let's go back to our sewing machine. And we're going to start up at this top point here. Just tuck everything in, make sure you've got your points together and nothing sort of kind of in the way. And we're going to just pull our raw edges apart from each other. If you've got one of these can be quite helpful to use. It's called an awl, or you can use the point of a, if I can find mine, a quick unpick. But you've just got to be careful with the quick unpick that you don't sort of slice through your fabric. You're only using the little point just to hold your fabric still. But I'll show you how we can use that to hold our fabric still. We get these really quite cheaply on from your local needlework shop. And I've just pulled a pin out as I was moving my fabric. Just put that back in again. Okay, so to our sewing machine. I've still got my needle across to the left, because we don't want, because when you're trying to do these kind of curves, you want as little of the presser foot onto your fabric as possible. You'll find it much easier if you've got a little bit of your presser foot on rather than all of your presser foot on. And we're going to try and sew this in a curve. So we're going to start at the top here, and you can see that your fabric is curving away from your presser foot, but that's okay because we're going to be pivoting quite a lot. So I'm going to take that first pin out, and then we're going to put a couple of stitches in forward and a couple of stitches back to the edge, and then needle in the work. Still doing our 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then I'm going to straight away lift up my presser foot. I'm just going to manipulate my fur and my fabric so that it is on top of each other on that edge, and press a foot down, and then I can use the point of my awl to hold the fabric in place whilst I smooth everything else down. So let's take a few more stitches forward, and you're looking for, whilst the fabric is bunched up here, you're looking for the place under your presser foot directly in front is straight and flat, and you might need to just lift up your presser foot and just move some of that bulk out the way so that you can then sew the next 1/4 inch or inch or so. And I can see a pucker starting to form, so I'm going to lift up my presser foot, release the pressure on that fabric, smooth everything down, and then take a few more stitches. It's not really a time for zooming, it's a time just to take your time on these. So press a foot up again, just move some of that bulk back, make sure this is all nice and smooth. Press the foot back down again, and then we'll take a few more stitches. And this is why having that needle in your work, or using your hand crank or hand wheel is best, to try and get this all nice and smooth so it lays nice and smooth for you. And then down towards the end, and then we're going to reverse stitch at the bottom here as well. Let's have a little look and see. So let's take our threads off. We always take our threads off just to keep it nice and neat. So this is what mine looks like. And you can see how much this ball wants to curve, but no puckers on the inside edge of that sewn line. And when we turn it round the other way, you can see that you've got a lovely curve along the side of Lillian's face there. We can use the edge of the awl. We're still going to just pull those fibres out of that seam from the faux fur, and that's going to give us, when we brush it back over again, it's going to really soften up that seam that we've just sewn, putting her face together. Okay, So you can just pick at this as much as you want. You can see the theory and how it changes it and just makes it really smooth. You might get a little bit of shedding, but that's all to be expected. So you're now going to go back and do the same with the other side, so that you've got the two side head pieces together. So let's do the other one, and then I'll meet you back here and we'll do the final part of the head before we then start sewing it all together. Just a little tip when you're just pinning your second one, before you sew it, just fold it out and just make sure you're going to have your left and your right, and that you've not pinned it so that you've got two left or two right. You need to have that nose point A touching. Okay, and then you can go ahead and then you can sew it with confidence, knowing that you're not going to have to unpick it. Just to say that if you do find that you've got a little pucker in either your felt or your fabric and you need to undo it, what I would suggest you do is don't undo the whole seam. Just go to where you've got the pucker, just pretend I've got a pucker just there. Take your quick unpick, and just unpick 1 or 2 stitches either side of the pucker until when you smooth your fingers over it, the felt or the fur will lie flat. Then just put it back in your machine and just start just a little way past before your gap in your stitches, and just sew over the gap and then finish a few stitches past, and that way then it'll just secure it down for you and you won't have to undo and unpick the whole seam. So just something else just to be aware of. Okay, the next bit then that we're going to do is we're going to get this shaped piece here for the nose, and we're also going to be using this long piece here of our fabric here, faux fur. And the way that we're going to do this is we're going to turn the nose round upside down, because that fits into this curved edge here. This bottom bit down here is for the back of the neck, or the back of the head. So this is the part here that we're going to be joining. So let me turn my fur over and make sure you've got whichever side of your fur your fabric you want for your top side for your felt. Again, fold that down until you can expose the edge of the corner, because the other thing is that if we thought that the other one was difficult to sew together, then look at the curves on this one. Can you see how the two go in the opposite directions? So this is what we're going to be doing. I tell you what, before we start, let's just fold our nose in half on that curved edge, and let's just put a pin on that curved edge. This will just help us get some more placement. Then let's go to our faux fur, put your two corners together and find the halfway point of that too, and just put a pin through there. Oops, there we go. You want your right side of your fur up, and then you're going to put the right side of your felt down. So let's go to the centre first this time, and let's put those pins on top of each other, take one of them out, and then replace the other one through both pieces of the fur. And then we know we've got an equal amount of felt and an equal amount of fur on both sides to fit in. So then we're going to fold back our fur to the point and match the point of our forehead there onto the corner there on the felt. And then we're going to then get a pin, tuck the fur back in again, those little fibres, because that will help it all when we want to fluff it out. And then we're going to go into the middle. You might have to just pull your felt down with your finger, and I'm pushing my fur up with my other fingers to get them so you've got the raw edges together, and then you're going to put a pin in. So one side's not too bad. Just going to curve now while we do the other. So now we're going to find our point on our felt and on our fur. That's always the next point that we're going to put together. Put those together just there. Tuck all that fur inside. Make sure that that's sort of curving in the right sort of direction for us. Pin through, and then we get another pin, and I can just, a little bit of fur's come off there, that's fine. Tuck that pile down inside, and then you're making sure your raw edges are matching, and then you want to pin it in the middle there. If you are not used to sewing with so many pins in a small space, or you're sewing with a child, or you just don't like it, then you can always just take 2 minutes and just tack this now if you wanted to, and just put some tacking stitches. Just make sure that on your sewing line that there are no puckers as you're sewing through. This one's fine, look, but you can see how bunched up this fur fabric is on the other side. And we're going to sew this with the felt side down again, because that wants to lie nice and flat for us, and then we can keep an eye on the faux fur on the top here and manipulate that round. So let's go back to our sewing machine. Make sure our fur's all tucked in, and make sure we've got a nice clear point of start. And take that first pin out once I've got my press foot down, and a couple of stitches forward, a couple of stitches back, and then needle in the work so that we're hands free and we can start to move. I'm going to use my awl again just to hold things down. So let's take some stitches forward on that 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Turn your speed down if you need to as well. That was a bit speedy, wasn't it? And then just lift our presser foot up, and that will just help just manoeuvre everything. Use the point of the awl just to make sure we've got. And you kind of put some pressure with this side of your hand down because you're wanting to sew that curve in. And we don't want to straight line, a straight line and a straight line. We want to keep that curve that was intended for the forehead. So again, just helping that fabric round on the 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Just stop regularly and just allow it all just to move and just to ease off. And then we're going to lift our presser foot up again. Make sure that pin's going to come out nicely. It was tucked underneath a bit too far for me. Take it out closer to the end. And then we're going to go off the edge, making sure we keep to that curve still for that 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, and reverse at the end. Needle out to work. Take off our threads. Okay, so you can see our nice no puckers on the end there. And although this seam's got quite a big curve in it, there's no puckers sewn in there, so that's all fine. And when we fold this out, we've got a lovely forehead there again. So let's just use our awl, and we'll just fluff our fur out of away back from the forehead and that sewn line, and that will then soften this when we've put it all together. You can also do this bit at the end. I'd quite like to do it as I'm going along, but it depends on how you feel and when you want to do it. So now we've actually got all of the elements that we need. So all of the pattern pieces can go back in my box, keep those nice and safe. And what we've got is we've got the centre gusset here with the nose and the faux fur. We've then got one side of the face just here and another side of the face just here. And we've got our 2 ears. Put them that way up so you can see them. So let's get started at putting this jigsaw puzzle together, shall we? Let's put the ears to one side again for the moment. We know we've got them done, so that's what we were trying to show here. And we're going to work with one side of the face first. So let's put this one to one side for now, and I'm going to work with this left-hand side. So the first thing I'm going to look at is the juncture between the fur and the felt. Because what we want to do is we want to put this right side of our side face over on top of the gusset part. And the first thing that we're going to be doing is moving all of that fluff out of the way, and we want the absolute point at which the fur and the felt meet to be matched. And we want a pin right in that junction just there to hold that really firm for us. And then we're going to go down to the centre of our nose. So we are going to... I've not got a point on the end of the nose. I didn't think we did on the pattern piece. Let's just put that in half first. Find the very absolute half of our nose. Could have done this before you connected it. But I can see where I am, so that's fine. So there's the end of our nose, the tip of our nose, and that should be halfway between the two. Oh, pin doesn't want to be straight. There we go. So make sure your pin is looking straight on the edge there, because your point of your nose is going to be finishing 1/4 of an inch past that point. 1/4 of an inch because we've got 1/4 of an inch seam allowance on this throat edge. Let me explain that again, because that might not quite be right. So for everybody, so on the take it apart. On the gusset here, we're going to fold this piece in half all the way down the length there, and we're going to mark the absolute point of that nose there. Make sure your pin is running down along that edge. Okay, so there's the point there, because that's going to tell us the centre point. But down the front here, so we're doing this part here now on the head coming round here, but on this point here we've got seam allowance to allow for. So whilst that edge there is the centre point, when we actually attach our point, and we're going to be attaching the point of the nose to it, we want that to be 1/4 of an inch past there before we then pin that into place. Okay, it doesn't matter which way around you do it, whether you do this forehead bit first or not. Then you're going to just move your fabric out the way, identify where the juncture is between the fur meeting the felt, and you want to feel with your fingers so that that's directly on top of each other, and then you need your pin in at that point just there, because you want that seam there going round the face between the fur and the felt to be absolutely spot on. So then what we're going to be doing is we are going to put some pins in, and I think we'll tack this as well. And we're going to start on the nose section because that's fairly easy to do. And we're going to start down the forehead section, and you'll see that we've got a bigger piece here than we have there. So we're going to have to do something called easing in, and that's what's going to give the shape and the roundness to the head for you. So let's start just at the top here, just move a little bit of the felt just up so it's not quite perfectly sitting flat on top of each other. Do you want to just ease some of that in? Let's put a pin in there. And then we're just going to use our fingers just to curve this felt slightly whilst smooshing down, it's a technical term, smooshing down the fabric here on the nose. But you've got to just kind of work this fabric a little bit in your fingers and in your hands just to give it that little bit of give, because felt has got that little bit of stretch that will allow you to put it together. And eventually, with the heat of your fingers and with a little bit of just gentle pulling, let me just pull a little bit on that forehead bit there, these two edges, raw edges, will go together and will sit flat. So don't pull it too much because you don't want to distort the head too much. And most of the junction is around the eyes, isn't it? And around there. Let's get a pin just here. I think we'll tack this just to make sure that we get this absolutely right, because it's really important. It's front and centre, isn't it? So what that's going to give us when we turn it round the other way is it's going to give us this lovely dip to the nose, and then the shaping, can you see? And some of these little ruckles will just come out in the stuffing process, but you want to make sure that that transition at that point just up there is absolutely spot on, okay? The back of it I'm not so fussed about, so I'm not going to tack that bit, but this bit we're going to sew first, and I am going to tack it. So let me get a hand sewing needle that you'll be able to see the colour of, or hand sewing thread that you'll be able to see the colour of. Let me get this red again. And I think getting the noses right is the trickiest part. So you do just need to just take your time and have your patience with you. Not a time to be doing this when you're short of time. And please know as well that the more you do, the more accomplished you'll feel at doing it. Because that's certainly how it feels for me as well. So let me just show you again here. So where that pin is, the orange pin is, that's pinned, and you can see there's 1/4 of an inch over the edge just there of that section there from that point, because that's what we need for that curve. So I'm going to go in with my pins, right, with my hand sewing needle right on that edge there, holding that together. Oops, got a little thread. And then just less than 1/4 of an inch, or just more than 1/4 of an inch, so you don't have to go over your stitches. Just going to sew this together, just roughly. Just be careful not to sew in any puckers, and you can take your pins out as you go so that they don't get in your way. But you're trying to honour all of the curves where you are, and just remember to stop your tacking stitches 1/4 of an inch before the end, and that will remind you that you need to stop at the end just there. Okay, take those pins out now. So then I'm going to stop right on the edge of that thread, but if I fold this round, you can see how the nose is going to curve up a little bit to give us that lovely curve on there. So let's go again back onto our sewing machine. Everything out of the way. Again, I've got my needle still over to the left, and I am going to take my stitches down from 2.2 down to as 2 because this wants to be quite tight on here. And then honouring your 1/4 inch seam allowance, we're going to just take a couple of stitches forward, a couple of stitches back, a needle in the work so that we can pivot around this corner. And we're going to sort of kind of pull it a little bit sort of straight as we go. So we're doing 1/4 inch so we get a nice equal face. I'm just going to revert, just go up to there to where that fur meets for now. Take off the starting and stopping threads, and then we can have a look and see how that's sewn together. So that's sewn together nicely, happy with that. So let's take out the tacking threads. Don't know what my husband was listening to then, but it was something that was too loud. I hope it's not come through on the video for you. Right. I think he forgets I'm recording sometimes. Right, so just pulling out the threads. And I'm showing you this bit because if you've got a thread where your needle has pierced through, then what you can do is you can cut off the thread close to one side with your snips. Just cut it off close to your stitches. It just means that you've got your threads gone through. And then when you pull the other side, it'll come out much easier for you, she says. There you go, it will do. Just make sure you've got your fibres. If you'll use a different colour tacking stitch to me. It is coming out, so that's fine. Let's just help that along all the way, see if it's stuck any further. But as I say, so you just took those threads out and take our knot off for a start. And that will help us just helped us not get ourselves prickled by the pricked by the threads of the points of the pins while we were stitching that together, which can be rather unpleasant. So again, we've got a bit more here caught. Can you see how that thread's caught? So I'll just go onto this side, snip it off really close to the threads, and then you can give it a pull and it'll just come straight out for you without compromising your seam. Okay. So we've got one side done, and now we need to go on and do the other side. So let's get the other side of our head. Let's move this out of the way and let's do the same thing again. So we've already got our point marked where we're going to end. So let's find our point of our nose, turn it so that it's going to be right sides together with our head. And then we want to actually match up the edge of this curve here under the chin. So this is the nose bit here, and this is the bit under the chin. And so we actually want to match up the raw edges of those because that will give us the 1/4 inch at the edge. And then a pin right on the edge of the nose to hold that together. Then we're going to go to the forehead. We're going to move all of that fur out of backwards, slick it back against the fur so that you can get a nice clean edge to see where that forehead section is. And those stitches are going to go right on top. You can feel it with your fingernail where it's sort of got a dint where where the felt meets the fur, and that can just go on top there. And then we've got all of this to play with again. So we're just going to just ease the fur on the top of the nose out, just gently, just tease that out slightly, just so that that's got a little bit of stretch in it. And then we're going to start and match all of this up together again. And it's just going to take a little bit of squeezing, a little bit of just teasing to do, but eventually you'll get to a point where you can start and put your pins in, and it'll start to come together. The heat of your fingers as well does really help just to, I use the word smoosh, but because it kind of just tells you what to do, because if you look at it you think, oh my goodness, this is never going to fit against the edge here because this edge here is just so much longer. But it's actually the point at which you're actually going to sew that matters the most. But just by kind of pulling your fingers down on the felt and sort of bunching the fibres together on one side of the felt while just stretching slightly on the other, and you'll see you'll start to ease in some of that fullness. We do something similar on the top of sleeves on jackets when we're making jackets and things. It is called easing in. It is a proper thing to do. We're not fudging it. This is exactly what you need to be doing to get these curves. And then on the end of the nose there, look, we've got another little bit. So again, I can see this bit here is just a bit proud. So I'm going to pull that on the back down towards the centre of my face a little bit. And then I can feel there that I can get my fibres down flat together. It does take a little bit of practice, and it does take a little bit of trial and error and a little bit of practicing, but you need this seam here because the bit that we're doing is this seam just here on either side. You need that to be absolutely flat. You don't want to have any puckers in there at all. So see what you can do with that. When you're happy with it, as happy as you can be, then we're going to then just do our tack-in stitches again on that forehead. I'll start on the centre of the nose, I think. So you can have a little bit loose at the end. That's right, 1/4 of an inch loose at the end. I'm just going to do some little tack-in stitches just to hold this together, and then we can get rid of our pins as we go. Try and follow the curve of your nose as well, so you're trying to mimic with your tack-in stitches the edge of the fabric. You don't want any angular lines. It's all smooth and soft, isn't it, which gives that lovely cuteness of that face. Should be able to get another stitch just as that transition from the, just make sure you've not bunched it up. And just make sure that on your sewing line it's going to sit nice and flat. Mine is, so let's just do a double stitch just here just to hold that together for us whilst we stitch it. Take these final pins out. Well, these are my tack-in stitches, look, they're not too small, they're quite big. So smooth on this side, and then here we can see we've got the fabric bunching up, but when I put my fingers on it I can move the fibres so that they sit on top of each other and it's smooth. If I was feeling that I got a big crease in like that, so like I've got a big crease in, I'd know that that was too tight, and I'd need to just ease the fibres backwards and forwards a little bit until they sit down really nice and smooth. Okay, let's get rid of my pins, don't want those on the side there. And then we're going to start, so I'm going to move the first seam that we stitched away from, making sure I'm not going to catch that in my seam, and I'm going to start right on the point where my other stitching stopped for the first side, because we want that to be nice and continuous around this nose. And I'm putting the side of the face down because that's lying flatter than the forehead is and where the top of the nose is, so that's why that bit goes down first. Line it up so you can see through your little hole where the stitches are going to start, and then we're straight onto a curve, so straight forward and back, and then needling the work. And you can see I'm just manipulating the fabric round with this hand. So press a foot up and let's just pivot slightly just to give us a lovely edge. Just make sure all of your raw edges are together, otherwise you'll have a too little bit of a seam allowance, and we need both sides of the face to be the same. Just keep lifting that presser foot up and just smoothing things around. Press the foot out, let's have a little look, see how we did. Starting threads off, and you can always do this bit by hand if you wanted to as well. You don't have to do it by machine, and certainly on the smaller characters I would certainly suggest you do this bit by hand. I have had better results when I've used hand stitching. And hand stitching is one of those things that does get better the more that you do it. So let's take our tacking stitches out again. Same principle applies as before. And then I tell you what, you don't need to watch me do this, do you? You know what we're doing. And then I'll come back to you once I've got my tacking stitches out, and we'll be able to move on to the next stage. Okay, so once we've got that bit transitioned, then we've got this nose here. Our forehead pieces there, look, are matching nicely. There's one there and one just there. That one's slightly off, but I think the fur is going to cover that. If it's too far off, the fur won't cover it. So you do just need to be aware of that. That one's great, but this one's... But I think that once that's covered over, if you're not happy, now's the time just to undo that few stitches and just manipulate your felt so that you're happy that that's finishing at the same point. This one's within my tolerance, so I'm not going to redo mine, but if it wasn't for you, then you'd need to just alter it. Just check it, just pull your fur forward. I know I've been pushing it always back at the moment, but just pull your fur forward and you'll see whether that's going to transition nicely for you. And if you're happy with it, then you can leave it as it is. The next thing that we're going to do then is sew this bottom part of this head gusset into place, now that we've got the nose and we're happy with that. So what we're going to do is one side first, is we're going to look at the long curve now around the outside of the head, and we're going to first match that up with the point at the very bottom of this head gusset. So put those points together. It can be difficult with the faux fur just to identify it, but just do your best. And let's put a pin at the bottom there. Again, just twist your pins if it doesn't want to go in. Oops. There we go. And then we're going to, now we've got our end point, now we can start at the top here where we did that transition from the felt to the fur. Tuck all your fur fibres in to identify the raw edge of your fur. And then you're matching the raw edges of your fur together and putting a pin as you go. Oops. As I say, you might just give your pin a bit of a twist just to get it through. I think it's the interfacing on the back of the, or the mesh back of the fur that isn't wanting to let the pins through very easily. So just identify your raw edges, smooth that fur in, just keep smoothing it in as you go along. And these should sit fairly well on top of each other without any easing in, I believe. Come on, pins. Yeah, it's the fibres in the back of the faux fur, I think. And again, some of these things you can say, oh, we would have just scooted past all of this, Claire, and just showed us the finished bit. But on my videos, I like to show you how long it takes, because otherwise, how do you know as a beginner how long these take for people who've done it before? And therefore, you know, you might give yourself a hard time because you think you're being really slow, but actually you're not. And these characters do deserve to have a bit of time put into them, because you'll have them around for many years to come, or whoever you gift them to will have them around for many years to come. And so you want them to be as lovely as possible, and as to be the very highest standard of stitching that you can get on them. So again, just make sure you've not got a too big a gap. If you just sort of pull your fibres around, I might ease some of that fullness back up the back of the head. We're just trying to just move the fur so that it's sitting nicely. I'm going to get a pucker there, so let me just move that, and that will move up further. That's better. So a little bit of just adjustment is needed just to get those to sit nicely, but not too much. And then once you're happy, you can see the curve of the head there. Then we're going to sew this again, and now I'm going to put the side of the head down against the base because that's wanting to sit slightly flatter than this other section is. And then I can manipulate this side round. So this time we're sewing with 2 lots of fur together. So let's see how the machines cope. We're going to take it steady. So if you've got a speed control on your machine, just turn that down. If you've got a walking foot, now would be a great time to put that on if you haven't already. And then we're just going to take a couple of stitches forward and a couple of stitches back just to anchor that thread, and then needle in the work and take out the first pin. So you're wanting to make sure that you've got your fabric is flat for about the inch in front of your presser foot here, so that you can see where you're going. And we're going to take our 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm going to sew up to our next pin and take it out. Just keep all of those fibres together and hold it still. Just help it through if you need to, because sometimes you need to just help with faux fur or thicker fabrics. You just need to keep some nice momentum on your fabrics to go through. Make sure they're all sitting nicely. We've got that, still got that shorter stitch length on, don't forget, just to help those where we're going to be stuffing it and just to reinforce that seam. Just putting a bit of pressure on with this hand here just to help that round the curve. I don't sew over pins, you might have noticed that. But lift up the presser foot here, look, and let's just move some of that bulk out of the way while we're doing this next section. Make sure that your raw edges are on top of each other and the needle can go back down again. Need to press the foot up, and let's just ease some of that fabric round again and just take it out of the way. It does help just to make everything just sit nicely. Pin out the way. Change direction slightly. Final pin out, and then we're heading up towards the top of the head here. I'm just going to overlap my stitches, so if you need to, just lift up your presser foot and just smooth that seam allowance down so it doesn't get caught up. And then let's just sew over to where we were, and let's just reverse that on that edge there, just to make sure those stitches have sort of merged into one and we've got a nice smooth transition. So let's have a little look here. So we've got a lovely seam there. I've got a little jig in my stitches there where I've changed direction, but it's caught both on the same side, and I'll just check through, and I don't think you're going to notice that. If you wanted to, you could just put the fabric back in the machine and just smooth that over. Just start a little bit before your stitches and a little bit after, and that will smooth that out for you. Take those threads off, but there we go. So we can start and see now how this head is all starting to come together, which is great. So now let's do this other side, and we're going to do this other side exactly the same way. So we've got the right sides together. We're going to pin at the bottom neck edge first, and then we're going to put those long edges together in order to give us the lovely curved head that we need. So if you do the same with that one, you can always rewind the video to see what I did on the first one, and then I'll meet you back here once you've done that, and then we'll be ready to sew our chin up. Okay, so once you've got both of your side heads joined together around the back of the head there, this is what it should look like. A few coloured little threads in there that I don't really want. Okay, so that should be how that all sits for you. And here's our nose, because the next thing we're going to do now is close this section up here. So we need to leave a little section open, and we've got a little sort of shaping on the edge here, which is where the neck edge goes together. So let's put that together first to give us the end bit, because that little opening there is where we're going to stuff, and that's where our neck's going to stay. So if you see the shaping around from the nose here, we've got a little point just there. Look, that's what we're going to just pin together to start off with. We'll put a red pin, because that'll remind us that we need to stop just there and not to sew past it. And then these two curves here will just fit very nicely together. Make sure your points at the nose are sitting together nicely, and they should be, because you left that 1/4 inch seam allowance on those edges. And then we're just going to put a couple of pins in just to hold these raw edges together. Again, you can tack this if you want to. I don't think I'm going to, because I don't think I need to. But you can just pin from the point here, from the shaping of the nose. Just make sure you've got your nose section out the way. Just fold that right out the way. Can you see I've got a little fold in that, just to fold that out the way, because you want a lovely clean seam, and you want to start right where you stop stitching on the nose. Right at that point there, you want to start stitching down. So I've just turned mine over so I can get to that point there. Again, I've got my needle across to the left, so that's going to make it easier. We're not got too much on the actual felt. A couple of stitches forward, a couple of stitches back, and then needle in the work. I'll take that first pin out, and then keeping to your 1/4 inch seam allowance. This is a lovely gentle curve down here, so just keep a bit of pressure on your left hand and you'll be able to just help that fabric just spin around a little bit. Till we get to the next pin, let's take that out. All the way around. We've got our red pin to remind us to stop, and we're just going to follow that shaping around that neckline just to go under the neck. So again, I'm just going to leave my needle in the work, pivot a couple of stitches and then just pivot, and then I'm going to just reverse. So nice reverse there, because that's what's going to hold your neck together whilst you sew. So let me just show you that. Okay, there's that nice curve, all 1/4 inch all the way around. And then once we've done that, we're going to put our fingers inside, go to the furthest part, and we're going to turn this round. Try not to stretch the neck opening too much if you can help it. Sometimes pulling or try not to tug will just help this all turn round. Lillian is starting to take shape. Let's put our finger into her nose and just turn that round. We've got that lovely transition there, that lovely Y seam just there. Happy with all of this. Just take some bits off, and her forehead is going to pop out. And here she is, she's starting to look really sweet now. So next thing we're going to do now is going to stuff her. So let's go and get some stuffing. I've got mine just here. Hopefully I don't bang the camera too much. As I've said before, make sure that your work surface is clear of any pins or anything sharp. We don't want to get anything sort of mixed up with the stuffing. And then we're going to just take our time and just put that stuffing inside her head. And the felt will stretch slightly. Hopefully the faux fur shouldn't, because we've added that stabiliser on the back of it, that interfacing on the back of it. But you'll start to see a head start to take shape. And I do think that the heads really, obviously, and the faces really add a lot of character to a lot of personality to these little felt friends of ours. Okay, so let's just get some more. Remember to push into your nose as well, because you need a nice firm nose, don't you, for her? Into the back of the head as well. And just like with the limbs, you'll be surprised how much stuffing they actually do take to get it lovely and firm. It's nice and lightweight, so it's not a heavy thing on here. Make sure that nose is coming out nicely. Hope you're enjoying sewing along with me. If you are and you fancy hitting that subscribe button, then I'd really appreciate that. I think last time I looked, 40% of the people who watch my videos are subscribers and 60% aren't. So it's quite a few that don't, and that's absolutely fine if you don't want to subscribe. It does mean that you can click the notifications bell though, and then when I do upload a video, you'll get a little notification on YouTube that a new video has been made live. So if that's something that interests you, that's something you can do as well. But if not, that's fine. I'm happy that you're here and sewing along with me today anyway. And a nice nose and chin for her. It's about 30 degrees over here in Spain at the moment, so I'm in my sewing room. We've treated to my sewing room with the air conditioning on. It is the middle of August, so I should expect it to be like that anyway, shouldn't I? Here she's starting to come. See how those little creases that we had in her nose are starting to come out now as the pressure is building and the felt is accommodating all of that facial feature for her. I do like to stuff mine quite well because I do like a nice firm face. Get it all in and then we can manipulate it round with our fingers where it needs to go to. You're sort of kind of feeling that you want to make sure that it's even. So I can see here's a little bit lopsided, so I can just smooth that in and let's smooth that down. She's got a lovely fringe going on here just over the edge of her forehead, so that's fine. And I want that nose to be a little bit more pronounced. Let's put the fibres in. She's a little bit more into the end of her nose, I think. This is the biggest character I've made as well of Lilly Rose Dolls. I do like it. I think although it's a more expensive kit, it's a nice starting point because of the size of the characters and the size of the felt that you're using, and pieces. It's looking nice now, isn't it? We can iron some of this out as well as time goes on, and I've got a little trick at the end that we can show you. So if your seams aren't quite as neat as you'd like to, I'll show you how we can fluff those seams up so that goes really nice and flat and almost invisible in actual fact. But once you've got your head to a point where you're happy with the stuffing in it, I just need a little bit more at the back there. We're going to need a hand sewing needle because we're going to do a line of stitches around the back of the head. Around the neck edge to then close that up. So that's what we'll be needing next. Oh, got some fluff in there, don't want that. The one thing that I did forget to say with the body is that sometimes I do put little affirmations into these characters. So in the body you can put a little red felt heart if you wanted to. Just be careful that it doesn't show through on your felt, on your white felt. But you can put a little affirmation in like you are loved or be strong or you are beautiful or anything along those lines that you want to sort of just to put into your character just to give them a little bit more of a meaning for you. And that's the fun in making these, isn't it? I've got a little stamp kit that I use to make mine. So there's our head at the moment, so I'm happy with that. And then let's get the hand sewing needle and the thread. You need to use the colour that your character is. It's not a tacking stitch on this one, it is a holding stitch. And let's make sure that this is quite a long piece of thread so that we can have it double, which will give us some nice pulling power on to cinch this head in. Okay, so let's do a knot at the end. Do a knot all the way down to the end. Got that? Okay. I'm going to start at the back of the head because I think it's easier to hide the knot in the fur, and about 1/4 inch down from the raw edge, so you've got a nice bit to carry on. Let's start from the inside so that knot is on the inside and isn't going to show, and then we're going to take some stitches a bit similar-ish size to your tacking stitches, but maybe just a little bit smaller. You don't want them to be too big, but they can't be so minute that you can't then, they don't pull up easily. And you'll see what I mean. If you're not sure about this section, just watch to the end and then you can always rewind it and then stitch along with me again, can't you, when we get to that section. So you're leaving about 1/4 inch on the edge. And going all the way around. Just use your thumb just to push the threads, the stuffing and the head, your fabric in so that you can get round. Or if you've got a circular needle, sometimes they can be useful, can't they, for sewing this kind of edge together, because it scoops in and out at the same time. But at the moment we can still get our fingers inside our characters, so that helps. Going round to the back and back to where we started. I just overlap my stitches just slightly on the back, so I think it takes some of the pressure off the actual knot at the back. I've got some fluff in mine, look, the wrong colour. Take that out. Do have to make sure your work surface is clean as well while you're doing these characters with them in mind. And then if you hold on to the edge, you can tuck your fur in and you can put some pressure on your stitches, and that will suck in that open edge. So I can still see a little bit of the fur, the stuffing. I don't try and get it closed all the way. I kind of leave a little bit of a finger hole through, and then when you're ready, just do a double stitch in place just to hold that tightness in place. And then I would just go around again with some more stitches. I'm going to use a little bit of a back stitch just to reinforce the stitches holding that neck edge together. Can you see how that's all kind of, they've got a little hole there to the stuffing, but that's deliberate at the moment because I'm going to do my face next before we attach it onto the body, because I think it's easier to hide your threads into this section here before we attach it onto the body. So just reinforcing around that edge. Oh, my off camera. Sometimes pulling it towards myself and I forget that you need to see too. Luckily the fur will hide all of these big stitches, so if you've got a good colour thread match on your threads then you'll be fine. Okay, so there we are at the moment. There's her head. And that's all section. I'm going to leave this needle attached to it because we're going to attach her onto her body with that in the next video. For now we're going to finish off doing her face, and we're going to be attaching her ears as well. But I just wanted to just sort of show you the section. Oh, look at that little ear once that goes on, look. That is super cute. Right, okay, so let me get my things together ready for the face, and we'll do the face while we can put our needle and our knots through the head through here, and then we'll come back again in order to put our ears on, and then I'll do a separate video because this one will already be too long already. I'll do a separate video for how to attach everything together, but look at that. Absolutely adorable. Okay, bear with me once. Oh, they actually go slightly forward, look, I think, from the picture. Beautiful. Okay, come back to me in a second and we'll get her face done. Okay, so I've just been diving in my little haberdashery, and I've got one with two little ribbon bows on and some ribbons, so keep that to one side in your box. It's not in that one, but there is another one with some little buttons and two black eyes and some black thread for her nose. So that's the one that we're going to use for now. So let's take out the black thread because we'll need that for her nose. And then let's take out the two black buttons as well, just because little beads, sorry, not buttons, black beads. Let's put that on top of the ear for now because that'll be a nice little resting place for it. And then the little buttons can go back into the box, which is why I say the box is really great for keeping everything together. And then here we've got our two little eyes. And the first thing I'm going to do before I do anything else is going to make sure that my doll needle, and I've got the medium size one here, which is 13 centimetres long, is going to fit through, because you want the eye of the needle to fit through your bead, and it does on that one. Just make sure it does on the other one first. Yeah. Okay, so those two do fit, so that's fine. And I'm going to start with the eyes first. So let's get a couple of black pins. I like to use the same colour as the eyes. And then let's pop that pin through her eye first, and let's get the position right. So we want to be on point B, which was about there, wasn't it? And it's always useful if you go onto the Lilly Rose Dolls website as well. You can have a look on there and you will actually see some photographs. Go onto the listing for your character and you will actually see some photographs of the completed characters that Claire has put on there for you, Claire and Richard have, because whilst the illustration is nice to have an overall feel, to get the exact placement right, sometimes it's better to work from a photograph. But you can have a little look on there and see how that's looking, which is great, I think. So that's pretty good. Let's just pin her ears on just for now. So I'm just going to fold the ear in half so that you've got the two edges together. And then let's just pin, use a different colour pin so that you can see how that's going to go on there, because that's going to help just make sure get nice and cute as well. Let's use this one. Because we're trying to get it together. Oh, that looks quite nice, doesn't it? So I'm sort of following the line across here, feeling where the seam is, and almost on the top of the head for the ear, just to pin that on and in place. and again there. You want them to be even, and you want them to be as cute as possible. So again, it's just trial and error on some of these, just to see exactly where you want those ears to actually sit and what sort of direction they want to have with them. But you then keeping an eye on your eye, keeping an eye on your eyes and seeing how you want those to be. So you're making your face as neat and as cute as possible, just with the placement. And as I say, oh, that looks a bit cute, doesn't it? It takes a bit of trial and error. Let me just get my laptop so I can bring up a picture for you, and then I'll have a look and see how that looks. Hold on 1 second. Okay, so I've just navigated onto the Lilly Rose Dolls website, and you might not be able to see it very clearly here, but this is the actual picture for the kit where you go to buy the kit. And if you scroll down to just under the listing, you'll see there's some actual photographs down here. So if you choose one of them, and then, oh, excuse me getting messages. If you choose one of the pictures, and then you can have a little look at how close the eyes are. Now I can see that the forehead was slightly flatter, so I have just been and manipulated mine and put a bit more stuffing in, because I'd got a crease across the nose there, if you remember. So I've just manipulated that fabric a little bit more so it more closely resembles the actual physical sheep. And the other thing that I noticed was that I was putting her ears too far back as well, and so I've just adjusted those so they can come a little bit further forward as well. I got them quite far back. So again, it just depends on exactly how you want your little lamb to look and where you want everything to go. But I can see where the nose is, and if you scroll through these photographs, I think it really does give you a good idea of the relationship to everything. So if we look at that one there, that's not far off there. Her nose is perhaps a little bit more rounded than mine is. So again, just adjusting your stuffing and then where the stuffing is to make that right. But also we can then copy this as well. To go onto the right one, where did I use? I thought this one might be good, because on mine I can just blow it up so that I can see. So we've got this Y shape on the seam, and then the lip coming down, a little bit of red pink just on the top there. So I've got my eyes where they are at the moment, so I'm going to leave those just there because I think they're pretty much about right, and they look even to me as well. I'll just say I've just got these black pins through the edge just while I just sort of position them, and that just helps it all come together. And then if we look again with the pins, what we can do is we can guesstimate where we want those lines to start and stop, just to sort of get it even before we start to put any thread into our character. So those two, let's get one more pin, and how far down does it come to? About there maybe. So you just maybe a little bit less. So it's almost sort of that three kind of thing. The other thing that I'm going to do on mine is, I don't know if you can see, but my little nose looks slightly off there. So what I'm going to do is, before I put these threads in, now I've got my pins in that kind of look about right, is I'm going to fluff up the fur, the felt either side of the nose seam, just with a head of a pin really. This is a broken felting pin, but you can just use another pin. Can you see how it starts to cover over that seam? So before I put my, because I don't want to do it afterwards, because I don't want to mess with the embroidery thread that I'm going to be using. But if you scuff up that's probably a good way of describing it, you're just scuffing up the felt, raising those fibres over where we're going to put the thread. Later I'm going to do this down the rest of the face as well, and I'll show you how I do that. But then we can use a steam iron in a moment to then flatten those fibres back down again, and it just hides any inaccuracies in that seam. So I have pulled a little thread out as well, which I will just take off. Again, this is all the tweaking that you don't get to see sort of when you see a finished item, but there's one little thread that's just been pulled through from the inside, so I'm just going to take that off, just try and take that off of nothing else. So that's kind of made that seaming down there almost invisible now. So then I'm going to get my steam iron, and I'll just show you, because these are glass head pins, so I don't need to worry about that. So I'm just going to show you how that then hides. Let me just get that, I won't be a second. Okay, so I've got my character now with those pins still marking where I want the position of those elements to go for the nose. I've also got my press cloth as well, because I'm going to put that over the face just to make sure that nothing marks this white felt, because I'd hate for at this stage now for anything to mark the white felt, and my ironer's got a couple of marks on the bottom just from interfacing. But I've got the seam switched on, and I'm just going to keep touching it to the felt on the edge here, making sure the steam goes in, and that will just flatten down those fibres enough so it starts to hide. Can you see how it starts to hide that seaming? So this is what we'll do in the end on these seams here as well, just to flatten them down. But just for now, I just wanted to do that nose a little bit before we started to actually sew in the nose. Sorry, I got distracted then. We're just touching this up slightly. But just be careful on the white felt, because of course just keep touching it all the time is not gonna help too much, and it will discolour it. But if your seams are wonky at all, whoops, oh, I've taken her ear off, look, then that's one of the ways that you can actually do that at this moment in time. Okay, so I've actually threaded my dole needle with the black embroidery floss, and I'm going to go up through the inside of the face now, and I'm aiming for, by pushing my needle in and out, I'm aiming for the position of the first black pin, and I'm there or thereabouts. Yep. So I'm going to take out the first black pin now that I've come through on that point. Oops. And then I'm going to go in directly up from the other black pin that we've got, slightly off centre from my centre of my nose, as I said. Oops. Come on, Lillian. You want a lovely nose on here. And I'm going to come out at the other black pin. Just take your time just to get your positioning just right. And then once you've got that in place, you can take that pin out. And I'm going to go down to this centre here again and come out at this black pin down here. That's it. Make sure you don't get any loops in your thread like I've got just there. It's just separate them out and then just pull them flat. That pin can come out then. I'm just going to do another one because I just think it just needs to be a little bit thicker. So straight back on where I was. Yeah, that's going to be better. And then across to this one here, into the middle. You're trying to double up those stitches, just absolutely smack on top of each other. Bottom of this one. This is where you just want to tighten these up just to make sure that they're sitting lovely and flat, like that. Whoops. And then back in here again, and this time I'm going to come out where I want this first eye to go. So just lift it up slightly so you can see where your needle is coming out, too far back. Yep, that'll do. Make sure you don't catch your ear by mistake. You see how that nose is looking now. So I've come out by the eye, so now I can take my needle out through the eye, put a thread through there and back in again, and now I'm going to come out by the other eye, exactly where that pin's going through, and hold that one on. Don't cinch them in, just keep them nice and flat. Load your other bead onto your eye, and then that can go back into place again. And then this time I'm going to head down for the neck, for where the thread went through to tie that in. Now obviously if this is going to be, I mean they're not intended as toys, are they, the Lilly Rose dolls? They are intended as being heirloom dolls or display purposes rather than for playing with. But if you wanted to put any more stitches through, you can do. Mine's just for display, so that won't come off. And then what I'm going to do now is take a few stitches just through the stuffing here, so that that will anchor down. Ouch, I've just burnt myself on that iron. Oh, that's not a good idea, was it? Just anchor your threads down here. And then if we go back up, we could put a long end on it. So we'll go back up to come out through the top of the animal somewhere, but you're going to put quite a lot of pressure on that thread, because when we snip this we want the thread to be pulled back inside. So put quite a big bit of pressure on, you can see, and then I'm going to snip through the thread, and that's pulled that through, and you can't see the end, but it's got a nice long end on the inside of there for there. So there's her face looking quite nice. I know Claire's put a little bit of pink blusher on the nose, and I'll probably be going to do that in a little while. But for now, let's do her ears for now. Should we do her ears, or should we just fluff up this face first? Let's do it. Let's fluff up the face. Let's just do this bit first. So we're just going to go ruckle up the felt over the top of the seam for her head. Here, down her face. I'm just brushing with the point of a pin over the top of the felt, either side of that seam. We've already done under the nose, so we don't need to worry about that. So you're just fluffing it up. And in actual fact, it does give them a nice look if you do spend the time just to go over and just fluff up all of the fur on all of her face. But just for now, let's just do this now. So if I do one side, then you can see the difference, can't you? And then if I use my press cloth again, and this is why I left my iron on, not to burn myself intentionally, but just to flatten that down. And I hope you can see, let me just show you this side first, and then that side. Can you see how much softer this seam is along here? It's not quite invisible, but it's not far off if I spent a little bit more time doing it, and how it just softens that seam. So it is a good way of disguising how your I'm just hesitating. I'm not melt. Just be careful you don't melt your eyes. I think I've got away with it. Probably because I used a press cloth. Just be careful you don't melt your eyes, because they are plastic beads, so they are going to melt. But just be careful of that. So you might want to position it with your glass head pins for where your eye's going to go. Do the smoothing of the face first before then you go in and correct that. It just looks like I've taken a bit of the shine off the bead. I'll twist it round a bit and then put the other side on. That's better. Okay, so that's what you can do just to smooth that off and just to smooth that face off a little bit. So let me just finish off doing the other side, and I'm going to do down her chin as well, and then I'm going to come back to you when we're going to sew on her ears. I don't think I showed you the doll needles that I use. I just use these ones here. I think they're by Hemline. And there's 3 different sizes in this, and I have found them all to be really useful. I don't think these were a lot of money at all. So it's the barcode number if you need that at all. Hopefully you can see that. But they're great, and they're great for your doll making, and we'll certainly need those when we're attaching the arms and the legs onto the body as well. So you do need to make sure you've got those. So the first thing I'm going to do is just take off one of the ears, because what we need to do is we just need to neaten these edges to make sure they're not going to sort of show at any time and pull through. So just tuck a little smidge of your fabric inside and just put your needle in with your hand sewing thread, just so that it kind of hides that knot inside. Just turn over that edge and just put a couple of stitches through just to hold that down. You're not going to see these stitches, so you don't need to worry too much about them. Don't take down too much, just enough just to turn over and neaten that edge so it can't fray. And then what we're going to do now is going to just fold those ears in half. So just tuck the lining inside and fold them in half so you've got the edge together, and then we're going to take a stitch over that edge just to hold that in. We can fluff the fur out again afterwards after we've finished, but let's just put a couple of stitches in just holding that ear in half. Okay, so that's what that looks like when that's done. And then let's go back to positioning them. And when I've looked at the picture again on here, the ears are really quite close. So I think they're at the top of these side seams and close to the front as well, to allow room for her circlet to go, you know, a headdress to go round. So let's just position this then onto there. And I think Claire's got them sort of kind of slightly forward, so that it's almost like they kind of come slightly forward on her cheeks. But this is going to be down to where personal preference comes in, so you can sort of play with this as much as you want. If you do want to just put a pin in just to hold it in position first of all, just while you kind of check how you want it to be. That one's quite low, doesn't it? Let's higher it up a bit more. It's much easier to sort of get it positioned before then you start to sew it, and then you can see where you are. Yeah, that was quite cute, isn't it? So now, because we've got the pin in place, and take a stitch through the faux fur. Try not to take too much, and then through the ear on the edge, just sort of holding it in place. I have still got a pin there at the moment. Let's just sew this down to kind of frame her face first. Careful you don't stick through your finger with your needle as you're sewing, because you don't want any red on your, or discoloration on your lovely white character. So we've got a couple to hold that into place now, so I'm just going to take that pin out. And now I'm going to go back in again, but I'm going to now sort of come to the underneath of the ear, because I'm going to fold that ear back a little bit. So I've got my finger on where it's joining, and then I'm just taking it back slightly so that I can put a couple of stitches in to hold this underneath in place. Just almost fold it back on itself whilst you put a couple of stitches through, sort of to hold that ear down. It will flatten down once we've finished, but we sort of want to sew all the way around the ear to make sure that it's going to stay on and stay in place. The first ear is always easier than the second ear, because on the second ear you're trying to match it up to your first ear to make sure that it's right. So you can't see any stitches because the fur hides them. Let's come round to the back of the ear now, and let's attach that bit down. Make sure you're catching some of your faux fur. Make sure you hold it down. Just keep checking that that's looking how you want it to. It's quite difficult with faux fur to be really small and dainty, and where you've got a nice colour match of thread, you'll see when we finish we can just fluff up the fibres of the faux fur around those thread edges, and it will neaten it off. You just got to just make sure that you can, I mean obviously you try not to be too messy, but yeah, it's that kind of elusiveness, isn't it, to do it messy enough but not too messy. Sorry, not messy enough, neat enough, that's what I meant. Apologies for me choosing the wrong word. So now that we've got that, we can just fluff up over the stitches, and you'll see that will just pretty much disappear. So rather than snap off my thread, let's see if we can get, oh no, I'm not going to be able to go all the way through. If I was using a doll needle, I would have been able to go all the way through. So let's do a few stitches here just to cast this off. And we're going to leave a long tail on our thread again. I do think that leaving long tails on your threads is a really good idea when you're making the characters, because the thread tends to get lost inside and it's not going to make it sway loose through a knot. So a few stitches in place, then let's just do a little stitch, and let's just do those 2 or 3 wraps round just to give us a surgeon's knot. So let's just keep our finger on the threads, that should just help hold that all nice and still. And then let's go in by that knot. Sorry Lillian, we're nearly finished, darling. And then out here to the side, and that will give us a nice long knot. So then I just keep some pressure on the thread, and then when you snip it, it'll go back through inside. So once we're there, just make sure you just position it, and as I say, we can just use the point of the needle just to fluff up the fibres again over the top of this, and you won't be able to see where that's been stitched on. Okay, so there's one on. Okay, let's put a knot on the other side, and then we're going to do the same thing. But you are trying to match up to your original ear. So just to check for height and check for positioning again, sort of how far forward it is. But don't forget, you're going to have to just go in first. Hide that knot inside, turn over the edge just to hide that. And then you can then fold your ear in half and then start stitching it on as you did the other one, but just matching it up as best as you can. Okay, I'm going to come back to you once we've done that, because that's probably where it is where we're going to leave this video for now. It's probably more than long enough, and the next video then I will show you how to construct your character completely together and how to attach your arms and legs so that you've got a complete Lillian in order to be able to start and make her clothes, which is the really exciting bit, isn't it? Well, it is for me anyway. I love making the clothes. So I'll see you all in a moment for a roundup. Okay, so I have both eyes in now. We've got the nose in. I've softened those seams as well on those facial features as I showed you as well. We've still got a needle and thread attached ready on underneath just for sewing her onto the body for now, but that's just anchored down. And I just thought I'd just show you how I'm going to just colour in her little nose, because if you look on the picture, which you might not be able to see very well all the way over there, whoops, just move her up, there's a little bit of pink eyeshadow or blusher just down on this edge just here. So I'm going to just do that with mine now. So I'm choosing something that's about the pinkiest that I've got. This one, I'm not going as dark as this, so I'm using this little peachy one. And I've just got a little bit of a brush, makeup brush, a clean one. Make sure it's got no dark eyeshadow or anything on. And then I'm just going to put a little bit in the middle and going out to the sides. Just as Claire suggests, a little bit more maybe. Try not to get it underneath at all, but just, so I've got the actual eyeshadow, so the edge that I put down on the eyeshadow, I'm then turning that so that's up towards the up part of her face, so that if possible it doesn't go down further down. Let's just blow off the extra, and that's just giving that little bit of colouring on there. You might not even be able to see it in the light. It's just got that little bit of colouring just in the edge just here. Now I can just brush it off, get the other fibres of her face off, and that will just leave that pink there just nicely in there for her nose. It's only just a very little and very subtle, but it's just there. It does look nice on there, so I'm glad that I've done that. So that's how I would do it, but if you notice, I just do a very, very small amount of the eyeshadow, just really small amount, because you can always add more on, but it's really difficult to get less to get it off if you've put it on. And if you wanted to practice your colour first, use a bit of your scrap felt from your face first or from your body and have a practice to see how it looks, and then you'll be able to then just be able to get it just right, because as I say, it can be really hard to get the coloration off once you've got it on. Okay, let me just turn the camera around. And so after a couple of hours later, we've got a lovely, lovely head here for our, well, I'm saying lovely, I hope you think it's lovely too, but a really lovely head there with complete with that little bit of nose colouring on the edge there for our Lilly Rose doll. Still got the hole just in the centre there, and the needle's still attached, ready for attaching her onto her body, but for now the head is all done. And this is why I say to you that sometimes it's nice doing the body and the limbs first, because then when you come back to the head, we've now got our body that's already made and we're all ready to start and put her together. And I do find that works best for me, but obviously you can do your way, whichever way you like. But if you're a starter, then I think the joy of making the head and then putting it all together without having to start and do all of that sewing is really good. So the next stage that I'm going to do then is I'm going to show you how to put your character all together, how to position the head, how to do the limbs, and how to position it so that she can stand up as well. So keep your fingers crossed for me. And I'll see you in a short while. I hope you've enjoyed sewing along with me today. It's been lovely having you with me. Have a great day, everybody, and I'll see you soon. Bye.